everybody. My name is Alexandria, and I'm a paranormal researcher with World Paranormal Research Society, and I'm also an ambassador for history preservation. I want to go into a little bit of the goatman. We captured the goatman in room 118. We have that video online that you can search it out at a later date, but before I mention that and what our team caught in room 118, I sort of want to go back in time and go back thousands of years to the origin of the goatman. And as a history person, this will appeal to history people, myth seekers, and everybody alike. Really, if we're going to go back into the time, if you're thinking of Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, it really goes back that far. So in ancient Egypt, the people of Mendes worship a deity, and I'm going to spell it because I'm not good at pronunciation, P-H-A-T. So they were a special group of people that worshiped this deity or this statue that was half man, half goat. So that's going to kind of set the stage on what this mythical creature looks like. Around that same time, if we're going a little bit in a different area of the world, we're talking about Syria. Syria, or Babylon, as they would call it at that particular time, actually had a deity that they worshipped as well. He was half man, half goat again. But they had a specific ritual that the king, when he would get married, they would adorn the goat with all these gold chains, put it around the goat's neck, and they would send him outside the city, and this would ensure that the king would have a successful, fruitful marriage. So, you know, the ancient Egyptians worshipped him, Mesopotamia, and also Babylon and Syria. And then we go into the Romans and also the Greeks. When I say Greeks, you're going to probably all say, yeah, we know who that is. Pan, P-A-N. So a lot of people are familiar with the movie Pan's Labyrinth and Pan. Again, he's a half goat, half man creature, but it goes way beyond that because Pan really is heavily into Greek mythology and culture, being a vibrant character that instilled vitality, sexuality, and all those things that people these days kind of frown on. But in the ancient world, sexuality and fertility was actually something to be proud of.
Mesopotamia, or land of rivers, is a name for the Tigris-Euphrates river system in Iraq, Kuwait, the eastern parts of Syria, and regions along the Turkish, Syrian, and Iran-Iraqi borders. Let's pull up a map of the ancient Mesopotamia region. Here you can see the Arabian Desert to the south. In this area to the left of that is Egypt, where they had an Egyptian god, Ptah, who was known to take many forms and many shapes, one of which would be the goat, half human, half goat, the goat man.
The legend or the myth, let's put it in that perspective of the goat man, really after Mesopotamia, Syria, we're going to now span into the biblical times. And there is the legend of Azazel. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Azazel, but he is really a demon-like god. You'll think of the Watchers, and he was cast out during Yom Kippur, as they say. So there is the Jewish tradition of the Watchers, or if you're familiar with the Book of Enoch, where Azazel was, again, the demon-like figure, half goat, half man, that was cast out, and he is said to raise havoc on the earth, that he and his other demon-like gods are to come down to earth in the evening and to entice the human men to wreak havoc on the women, sexuality again, and prowess. So biblical times, and even Jesus made mention of a goat-like creature where he was saying all the sinners, in a nutshell, all the sinners were considered to be goat-like men and deities for being overly sexual and, you know, with their sexuality. So that was a big chunk of the goat man or his phenomena through the biblical times.
Azazel in Judaism and Christianity is the name for a fallen angel. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, the name Azazel occurs in the line 6 of 4Q203, the Book of Giants, which is part of the Enochic literature. Let us take a look now at a picture of Aziel as he is shown in the Dictionnaire Infernal, which was published in Paris in 1825. This book was a book of demons.
Now we're going to hit into a very important or exciting period for me as a historian, the Knights Templar and the Crusades. I've always found that to be a fascinating period of time. But the goatman, or as they call it, Bayonet, was first mentioned in trial transcripts in 1098. Can you imagine 1098, how long ago that was? So the Knights Templar were said to actually do many rituals in regards to Bayonet, but they would never freely admit that, only under extreme torture. So they were said to have many rituals involving the goatman deity, as they called it, Bayonet. And an interesting fact is that it's supposed to be a bastardization of the Prophet Muhammad. I don't know how you get Bayonet from Muhammad, but in some of the trial transcripts of the Inquisition of the Knights Templar, they were said it was a bastardization of that Prophet Muhammad. I don't see the correlation, but historically that's what it said. So the Knights Templar were a Christian organization that had the Crusades to the Holy Land, and their secret or many rituals were involving the deity or the goatman Bayonet. So that's where we first, through history, the word Bayonet comes into play in the historical records.
The Knights Templar would be the equivalent of what the U.S. Navy SEALs are today. Officially endorsed by the Roman Catholic Church around 1129, the order grew rapidly in membership and power. Templar Knights in their distinctive white mantles with a red cross were among the most skilled fighting units of the crusade. So let us take a look at their seal that they used during the time. In today's world it looks very crude, but for their time it was very unique and held in great value. Now let's look at one of the things that they did use in their religious practices, which was Bayonet. Bayonet would later become adopted by Aleister Crowley and eventually become the symbol for the Satanic Church. However, Bayonet did not start out like that. This is just another version of the goatman that we've been talking about this entire time. The whole link with Muhammad that Alexandria was referring to was during the last Crusades, when the Catholic Church actually tortured the Knights and have them admit to things that was not true. It was definitely a falsehood, this whole relationship to Muhammad, who is a false prophet.
Okay, folks, now we're going to sort of take a history jump, or we're going to take a history leap into the 19th century. And I'm not even going to begin to pronounce this guy's first name, but the last name is Levi, which is L-E-V-I. I believe it was in 1854, he published his I'll call it even a grimoire of high magic, in which he took Bayonet into a whole new level, or a mythical level, where he sort of became the figure akin with the devil on the tarot cards. So he really molded, and a lot of the images that you'll see on tarot cards depicting the devil will look almost goatish with the horns. So it was Levi that really took that image and brought it into the 19th century. And then we have Aleister Crowley. We all know who Aleister Crowley is. He took Levi's image and really used that image of Bayonet into his rituals, into his sexual rituals or sexual magic. And Aleister Crowley really took the image of Bayonet and thought it was a product of an animal and a human being produced through sexual magic.
Alphonse Louis Constant was a French occult author and ceremonial magician, also known as Eliphas Levi. Eliphas Levi went to Roman Catholic Seminary School, which was a little known fact. And upon graduation, he did not become an ordained priest. Instead, he studied other world religions and became an author on magical practices that took place in those religions, such as in this book, Transcendental Magic. During his period, he had a false idea of Bahamut, and he related it more closely to the devil. And this is the tarot card version released on Levi's idea. Now, Aleister Crowley, the copycat, would go ahead and run with this idea and later used this as a figure for the occult.
Okay, there's so much more in history that we could talk about the goatman. We could be here forever in the day, but we're going to now take a historic leap and we're going to head to the continent of North America. And the goatman really kind of makes his appearance in North America in the early 1800s in Louisiana. Louisiana had a lot of sightings in various swamps in that region, and so many sightings in the early 1800s that there became the goatman fever. So goatman fever really headed into North America, and Washington County, Wisconsin, in the 1800s, there's a well-known story about a Civil War veteran. He was coming home with his new bride. They were in a wagon, and they were going through the countryside. The axle of the wheel broke, so they had a breakdown with the wagon. So the Civil War vet decided to go look for help. He left his new bride in the wagon. She was sitting there. Hours had passed, seemingly wondering where her new husband was, so she decided to venture off the wagon. And the legend has it that she would hear these grunting sounds, and something that was in the woods. Something wasn't right, so she decided to kind of muck it up and decided to look for her husband. It wasn't long that she went into the bush and she came onto a site that, I mean, horrific even in the day, horrific for today. She seen her new husband hanging upside down from the tree, all bloody. But the key fact in this story is that all around his body that was hanging from the tree was hoof marks. So that was a legend that is well known to this day, and they say even to modern times in campfires, it's a story that everybody tells that happened in Washington County, Wisconsin, about this Civil War veteran that was devoured or killed by this goatman and the goatman fever.
A lot of people in Washington County, Wisconsin believes that the goatman is responsible for a lot of missing persons and homicides. We do not have pictures, except for one, of just some graffiti referring to the goatman. Back to the story.
We're still in America, and we're still, we spoke about the campfires in the 1960s of the goatman, but really after the 1960s, this is when the goatman kind of became a thing of myth and legend. They're saying that the majority of the reports 1960 and going further, into modern times, took place between October and May. There's no scientific data, no historical data on why the majority of the reporting sightings of the goatman took place between October and May. And they said that most of the sightings took place in the deep south. There's actually reports of him 1970 in California. So most of the factual reports that were coming in from the public were in the deep south, and why that happens between October and May, we're not really sure. There was actually a report in Florida in the 1970s where he became a mythical creature, that couples that were parked on the side of the road and, courting couples that wanted to get away from their parents and do all these things in a car, he would come outside and attack. There's actually a report that he actually raped a few people that were in the car, and you could be either male or female. So the sexual overtones of the goatman was rearing its head in 1970s in Florida, where he would sexually assault the people that were parked in the car.
All right.
So there's a saying that will sort of incorporate where we left off last time to this time, that they say that in human spaces, inhuman monsters can be created. So that kind of leads into what I want to touch on now. And I mean, what a monster or myth wouldn't be complete without some kind of government conspiracy theory. So basically in the 1950s, in the Beltsville Agricultural Center in Maryland, there was started to hear reports of genetic experiments that the federal government was conducting, and the story has it that this particular scientist in this top secret federal government building was conducting experiments with animals, and one of the experiments kind of went awry, went haywire, and he became mutated and became a goat-like creature. So this legend was around on from the 1950s, and it was very prevalent because Creepy Canada, which is a television series, even did a mini documentary on this goat-like phenomena from this scientist that was doing these top secret military government experiments at this Beltsville Agricultural Center in Maryland. So again, couldn't be complete with some kind of conspiracy theory or genetic top secret government theory.
The federal government has been doing mutations since the 50s, but has not been on public record until the early 70s. The reason for this is that they're highly secretive. Our federal government does not want us to know all the experiments and advances in technology that they have actually made. Genetic engineering, also called genetic modification, is the direct manipulation of an organism's genome using biotechnology. It is a set of technologies used to change the genetic makeup of cells, including the transfer of genes within, across specific boundaries to produce improved or novel organisms, such as a man and a goat man.
Now we move to Texas, where there seems to be a rash of sightings in Texas from Kentucky, where Old Alton Bridge, that is located 5 miles south in Denton, Texas. 1969 or so, that's when a lot of rash of disappearances happened, and they said that it was to do with a goat-like creature that would haunt that bridge. So rash of disappearances and funny things that would happen. They would see odd lights there. But around that bridge, actually the bridge was conducted in the 1880s. There was a Oscar Washburn, who was a very successful black man in the day. It was 1930s, where he had a business. He was a goat farmer, and he had a very successful business. He was called the goatman at that time. He actually wanted to put a sign on the bridge for his business, and the locals there didn't think highly of having a black man being able to be, number one, successful, and to put a sign on the bridge. So it was a very hot summer night, they say, in August in the 1930s, when Klansmen from the KKK decided to teach him a lesson. So what they did is they dragged Oscar, who they called the goat man, to the bridge, and it is said that they lynched him on the bridge. But what spooked the Klansmen is that when they looked over the bridge, they seen that the noose was empty. There was no Oscar's body was never found. They never found any evidence of his body to this day. And they said that since then, the bridge has been closed to local traffic. They built a newer bridge. It's available for foot traffic, but goat-like creatures supposed to be seen on this bridge. Hoof prints, strange lighting phenomena is on the bridge. So if you have a chance to head to Denton, Texas, to the Old Alton Bridge, it's a site that you may want to take into and visit this bridge that has the goat man. Okay, folks, further on to this goat man phenomenon, and we're going to go into recent times. September 2009, the Daily Telegraph really posted a story that took place in Zimbabwe. And for all you people that are not good at geography, we're going to tell you that Zimbabwe, of course, is in Africa. There was several newspaper articles in the UK that was done on this particular story in regards to the birth of a half man, half goat. They call it a faun, F-A-U-N. So this particular village in Zimbabwe, where they were just completely freaked out. I mean, who wouldn't be freaked out when you have this half man, half goat being born? And actually the governor at the time, the villagers thought that it was something that was spawned of witchcraft, and also of, there was a story of a man that was having sex with a goat. Apparently, this is a fairly common occurrence with people in Zimbabwe or Africa having sex with a goat. I really can't see that, but it went to further detail that they were so spooked by the birth. It did live a couple hours, so they were able to look at it. It was actually the head, to be more specific on what it looked like, it was actually the head of a man and then the body of a goat. And they said that even the dogs in the village were so freaked out by this creature that they wouldn't even go near it. The villagers decided to burn the body after this creature had died on its own, and they were afraid of it being an evil omen, or it was just evil, it would bring bad luck to the village. So several occurrences of having sex with goats is quite possible in Africa. I can't see that, but this was, made the news in the UK in September 2009. So it was a pretty big story then. And for all you fans, we're going to sort of skip forward 2014, Masters of the Universe. And if you're not familiar, that was a comic. It was actually a TV program. I used to watch that with my son. 2014, they came out with a goatman figurine, and the goatman figurine was actually a protector of He-Man. So if you're familiar with He-Man and Masters of the Universe, the goatman figurine made its appearance in 2014. So you can see from all the historical stuff that we've covered into modern times, coming into America, then going to Africa, and this legend or this myth of the goatman has been held in such high regard that we've had beers named after the goatman. We've had Masters of the Universe come out with a figurine. So through sort of the historical puddles of time with myth and legend, the goatman has really been around for thousands and thousands of years. And I mean, there has been as recent sighting as April 2016. So he continues to spark our imagination about the possibilities of this creature being out there. And, if we're excited by the unknown and mythical creatures, I think we should continue to be still in awe like a little child to explore the possibility. Nothing is impossible in this world, and the goatman has shown us that, all things can be possible if you have an open mind. So, I'll leave that a little bit of a food for thought for you in regards to myth and legend, because he's really, there's been documentaries about him and different things out there, but we're proud to say that we were the first paranormal group to capture him on film. So that's a huge feat, to say that we captured this mythical creature that's been around since thousands and thousands of years. Every culture, every religious belief has their own version of the goatman, and I think that we're going to leave that in your imagination, and we hope that if you've sighted the goatman yourself, that you contact us. We'd like to hear from you.
Okay, as Alexandria was saying, we are the first paranormal team in history to ever capture the goatman on film. One of the things that she left out was that we caught him in room 118. That video will be for sale on Vimeo. You can go to vimeo.com and purchase that video. There will be some of the video on YouTube under room 118 as well. So if you're serious about finding out more about the goatman, then go look for World Paranormal Research Society, which is our organization, on YouTube, and look for room 118. Watch the entire film. You will see the goatman in there. Not just that, but Alexandria also wrote a book called The Goatman. And that book, which really gives more detail than this documentary does, so you can purchase that book on Amazon. Look for The Goatman on Amazon. Just go to amazon.com, type in books by Alexandria Horyski, The Goatman by Alexandria Horyski. And, you can purchase that book at a great price on there. And we'll go back to Alexandria and let her tell you a little bit about the Native American beliefs as far as shapeshifters and Wendigo and stuff like that. So here, back.
For all of you that are really heavy into Native American spirituality or Aboriginal spirituality, will all know what the word Wendigo means. And Wendigo is actually a Cree word, and Cree Indians are in Canada where I come from. So there's the legend of the Wendigo or shapeshifter. So if you're not familiar with Wendigo, I'm sure you're going to be familiar with the terminology shapeshifter. And a shapeshifter is a mythical creature that can transform himself into any being at will. And we do have a legend of a goatman entity named as a Wendigo. And it was said that this Wendigo or goatman entity would be more familiar with having a half human physiological, figure, because then he could play havoc on the people and the people would be more susceptible to him and his charms. So Native American culture, Wendigo and shapeshifters are huge in mythology. I used to speak to my grandfather about Wendigos. We do a lot of different things in regards to Wendigo, mythical creatures. So, Native Americans, again, have a creature like the goatman, the shapeshifter, that will change itself into will. So there's a lot of cultures out there to explore. We've only touched the surface on the goatman, and my book, like Timothy had said, goes into the beginning of the history all through time and all the different cultures and religions that have used the goatman for their own means. But I mean, he is definitely alive and well. And I gotta really say, there's not too many mythical creatures or monsters, if you want to use the term monsters, that can say they've been around for thousands and thousands of years. So I think that says a lot. Every myth or legend, they said, really has to begin with truth. So I mean, every culture has used it, but I mean, I think it's pretty phenomenal that this creature has been around for thousands and thousands of years.
Okay, so one of the other things we didn't talk about too much in detail was the devil. If you look in the biblical description of the devil, he has very characteristics like a goat. However, the Knights Templar used the goatman as one of their religious symbols. So the goatman, depending on what culture you talk to, can be good or bad. You cannot live and die by the King James Version Bible. Everybody out there knows that Bible is very watered down. It's been watered down by Constantine and the priests of the Catholic Church. And so there is other books of the Bible, such as the Ethiopian Bible, who has the complete collection of all the biblical books. It's very worth checking out. It goes more into detail on the devil and the goatman in those books. However, if you are a King James Version person, then yeah, it even tells in that King James Version about how the devil has characteristics similar to a goat. Also, if you want to contact us, the email is WPRS. That's WPRS, and then the word science at gmail.com.